Well, we wanted to grow business between the United States and Mongolia, and I was traveling so much between other Asian countries when I was living in Mongolia, and I would always notice that there were AmChams in other countries. So I naturally wondered why we didn't have one in Mongolia. And during a business trip to Washington, D.C., I took the opportunity to call the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I was connected to Tammy Overby, who directed the Asia division at the time. And I asked her, I said, Tammy, Mongolia is the fastest growing economy in the world. Why haven't you started an AmCham there? And she was very gracious and very nice and just explained to me, though, that the U.S. Chamber doesn't start AmChams, that if the private sector wants an AmCham, then they start it themselves. So she quickly turned the question back on me and asked me, Jackson, why haven't you started an AmCham in Mongolia? So a few days later, I was back in Ulaanbaatar, and I went with my company accountant, Basen Setseg, to meet with our lawyer, Byra, and his law firm quickly registered American Chamber of Commerce in Mongolia in 2011. Well, today Mongolia is a tough sell to international investors, and I think it's important to realize why that's the case. There was a high watermark for global investment back in 2009 and 10 after the OU Tolgoi agreement was signed. A lot of global capital did come to Mongolia, but it left Mongolia starting in 2012. And since the high watermark, over 99% of global investment has exited Mongolia. And I think it's really important to understand why the global investors left. And it's not because of commodity prices. It's not because of global financial issues. Global investors left Mongolia because of bad government policy and because of corruption. And so if we want to bring them back, there's got to be a steadfast commitment by the Mongolian government to clean up corruption and to bring in and usher in a pro-growth economic policy that is stable. You cannot invite investors to come to Mongolia only to change the rules once they are there. That's a great way to drive them away even again. So I think now the goal has got to be a strong anti-corruption campaign followed by a strong period of pro-growth economic policies and that are stable. And hopefully then the global investors would give Mongolia a second chance because the opportunities and the potential is still here. Everything that was here for the investors in 2009 and 10 and 11 is still here today. We just need to earn the confidence back. And that will only happen with good, steadfast commitments and leadership by government. I've been working on Mongolia-US relationship issues for 20 years, and I am so happy to see that the relationship between our two countries is only growing stronger year by year. In 2019, President Batulga went to Washington to meet with the American president to elevate the Mongolia-US relationship to a strategic partnership. And that was a very significant advancement in our relations. And it really does underscore the importance that the United States places to its relationship with Mongolia. And likewise, it's very significant that Mongolia, landlocked between China and Russia, will have a strategic partnership with the United States. Over the 20 years, I've also seen an appreciation in Washington across all sectors, not only government, but in Congress and in the NGO and civil society sector, about why Mongolia really does matter to the United States. And now that we have signed this strategic partnership, and now that there's a growing awareness of the importance of Mongolia to the United States, the question that we all must answer is, what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with this momentum that we have in relations? And I think now's the time to really look commercially, strategically, culturally, and in matters of promoting good governance to really take things to the next level. And there are a lot of opportunities in front of us to do just that.
AmCham-ыг анх Jackson Cox бид хоёр үүсгэн байгуулж байлаа. Тухайн үед бид хоёр тусдаа AmCham-ыг үүсгэн байгуулахаар явж ирснийг би мэддэггүй байсан юм байлээ. Дараа нь мэддэг болоод бид хоёр уулзаад хамт хүчээ нэгтгэхэд явъя гэж тохиролцож байсан юм аа. Тэгээд бид хоёр маш хурдан ойлголцоод найзууд болоод хамтын үйл ажиллагаа эхэлж байсан. Тэгээд энийг би маш зөв шийдвэр гэж боддог. Яагаад гэвэл Jackson Cox AmCham-ийн маш чухал үүрэг гүйцэтгсэн. Тэр үед Монголд консалтинг компани ажиллаулдаг байсан. Маш амжилттай явдаг байсан. Тэгээд Монголд аягүй олон танилтай болчихсон байсан. Тэгээд бүх тэр одоо ингээд туршлагаараа AmCham-ыг өдөрдөн чиглүүлж амжилтанд хүргэсэн юм аа. Хамгийн түрүүнд Jackson Cox-ыг би дурдмаар байна. Тэр бол манай амжилтын гол түлхүүр юм. Тэрээр анх үүсгэн байгуулж, байгууллагуудыг гишүүдээр татаж, төр засагтай хамтран ажиллан AmCham-ыг таниулж, байр сууриа олж хөгжөхөд гол үүргийг гүйцэтгэсэн юм аа. Дараагийн нөлөөсөн зүйл бол Америкийн өөрийн нэр хүнд юм. Америк бол өөрөө хамгийн хүчрхэг улс бөгөөд манай улсын хувьд 3 дахь хөрш гэж явдаг. Эдийн засаг, геополитик, урлаг соёлын орчинд манай хоёр хөрш орнуудаас тутахгүйгээр чухал нөлөө үзүүлдэг учраас Америк улс, Америкийн элчин сайдын яам, Монгол улс ба манай худалдааны танхимыг дэмжиж явдагт би баяртай байдаг.
AmCham started just about the time I came to Mongolia, and Jackson Cox, who was the founder and the initial chairman of AmCham, approached me because obviously I was heading up a large American organization, and asked me if I would support his efforts to get the chamber started. So I was glad to do that because I think business associations or a chamber of commerce like AmCham is very valuable for its members in that it can address issues with the government of the country or with the agencies of that government, ministries and the like. Sometimes on topics that as an individual company it's difficult to tackle, or particularly as a foreign invested company. Sometimes you're aware that you're a guest in the country, and so you try not to get onto some contentious issues, but sometimes contentious issues have to be dealt with, and a well-run chamber like the American Chamber can do that, take on that role for you. I think from the outset, and I think this again goes back to the view, the vision that Jackson had, was that to be effective, you need to have a strong policy and advocacy role. I think many of the associations were sort of social networking type groupings, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think for a business chamber to be really effective, it's got to be prepared to address the key issues of its members. And I think from the outset, AmCham established itself as the preeminent business association in terms of advocacy and policy. And I think that's continued through to today. I think the other thing to recognize is that foreign direct investment is an important part of any economy. It's not just for a developing or a small economy like Mongolia, but you take two largest economies in the world, the United States and China. Both of them actively encourage foreign direct investment into their respective countries, because they recognize that is absolutely vital if you're going to have a healthy and sustainable economy. AmCham also annually, or normally anyway, it's been a little difficult obviously during the last couple of years with COVID, has taken a delegation of Mongolian and members to the United States to meet with both business and with the US Chamber in Washington DC on something called the door knock, where there's been a chance for chamber members to present their proposals to both American businesses and also to Congress and so on, to try and get legislation that encourages improved trading relations between the two countries. It will continue to grow. It's interesting that, as I think I said early on, AmCham from the outset set out to be a policy and advocacy organization. It then sort of somewhat later realized that, well, there's also a fun side to these things. So the networking evenings started and the networking events and so on. And so now there's a combination of the serious business stuff and the opportunity to network with fellow members and with others in a more relaxed environment. And I think one of the other good things has been the development of mentorship and the mentor days that have been organized over the last several years. And I think if it continues to do that, it will have a good future.
Sembeno, I'm David Reiner, and please welcome to MSM. AmCham, or the American Chamber, is established to help represent American business interests in Mongolia and work hand in hand with the U.S. government to develop systems that allow these businesses to operate well. So from one perspective, AmCham is important to represent the American business interests here. Also, as a member of the international community and the overall Mongolian business community, AmCham works hand in hand with many of the other chambers and organizations to help develop smooth policies that allow businesses to flourish in Mongolia and develop opportunities for employment and growth. Well, the people made AmCham successful. I believe at the first meeting, perhaps there were 10 people. Since then, the membership has grown and flourished. There's been great leadership through the heads of AmCham with Gary and Jay and others. Local community and business community, both foreign companies and Mongolian companies, have been highly involved and allow the organization to flourish. I don't really feel that there are specific barriers with regard to foreigners against Mongolian businesses. I think that both businesses are treated relatively equally. A lot of differences has been smoothed out over time. The barriers are mostly barriers that every business in Mongolia faces with regard to young laws that are still ambiguous and unclear in the areas of labor and import and taxation. And AmCham works aggressively with the Mongolian government to help improve the legal rubric and allow the businesses to operate smoothly. Well, AmCham's a wonderful place. The community is good. The last couple of years have been very difficult with COVID, and a lot of the foreign community, the ones who have been here for a short term and the ones who had been here for a long time, have had to return to their countries for practical and health reasons. I hope it comes back. I feel it'll come back, and I'm sure that AmCham will play a key role in helping to reestablish the foreign presence in Mongolia.
Юуны төрөнд хамтран үүсгэн байгуулсан Jackson Cox-т баярын мэнд хүргье. Хамтран ажиллаж байдагтаа маш их баяртай байдаг. Сүүлийн 10 жилийн хугацаанд AmCham-ийн үйл ажиллагаатай салшгүй холбоотой хамт байдаг нь миний хувьд нэр төрийн хэрэг. Би үргэлж AmCham-тай хамтарч өөрийгөө зориулж ажиллах болно. Мөн үе үеийн гүйцэтгэх захирлууд болон Төвшин Заяа, Триша, Ажаах нартай баярын мэнд хүргье. Та бүхний хувь нэмэр асар их байна. Үүнийг би онцлон хэлмээр байна. Мөн үе үеийн AmCham-ийн хамт олондоо баярын мэнд хүргье. Би бүгднтэй нь хамтран ажиллаж, найз нөхөрлж явдахдаа баяртай байдаг. Ингээд та бүхэндээ эрүүл энх аз жаргал хүсэж AmCham-ийн 10 жилийн ойн баярын мэнд хүргье.